It's kind of hard to believe that the Oculus Quest is already half a year old. If it was a human baby, it would already be rolling over and sitting up all by itself by now. But thankfully it isn't a miniature puke and shit machine, it's a brilliant tether-free virtual reality console and one of the most compelling games machines around right now. And while the Quest's games catalogue is still a little on the light side as we head into 2020, there is still a worthy selection of titles covering the biggest genres out there, from puzzle and adventure games to action-packed shooters and stuff that'll get you dancing about your living room while your family mentally disowns you. So here's my pick of my favourite, the very best Oculus Quest games as we head into 2020 for anyone who is new to the console. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now my first favourite new Oculus Quest game is Pistolwhip, a kind of hyper-cool, super frantic mashup of John Wick, disco dancing and pulled grown muscles. Definitely stretch before playing kiddies because you'll be limping like an old man for days if you don't. Anyway, the idea behind Pistolwhip is simple and also brilliant. It's basically an on-rail shooter where your sole purpose is to pick off every bugger what pops out from behind the scenery. Each level is set to a different song and you get bonus points for plugging your foes in time to the beat. So it's basically kind of like an ultra-violent version of Just Dance. That said, the funky digital style visuals are obviously reminiscent of games like Superhot, and they help to keep the game child-friendly as well because you're not actually spraying someone's kidneys across the nearest wall with every successful shot. There isn't so much as a splash of blood in this game. The best thing about Pistolwhip is of course it makes you feel like a proper badass, even if you're basically just a bald and middle-aged and poncing about in his living room. Chalk up another win to virtual reality over actual reality. Each stage has a choice of 3 difficulty levels and you can play around with different modifiers which affect your final score. Now one of the final VR releases of 2019 is the Oculus Quest version of Arizona Sunshine. Yes, it is yet another zombie game and yeah, it is pretty light on plot, but this first person adventure really makes you feel like you're lost in a desolate wilderness in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Most of the time you'll be foraging for resources while putting those brain-munching bastards out of their misery. Capping an undead fiend from 30 yards with a super accurate headshot never gets old. Arizona Sunshine's puzzles are generally on the easy side. All you'll ever really need to do to progress is find a key or push a button, but the occasionally tense exploration and gritty action scenes make this a VR title well worth checking out. Next up, if you like your games on the batshit mental side, then definitely check out the Under Presents. This highly original title is rather tricky to explain, but in a nutshell it's an intriguing experimental experience that's part game, part interactive art, part live theatre. One minute you'll be teaming up with past versions of yourself to solve a puzzle, and the next you'll be watching real humans performing a live show as virtual cat things. At times it's absolutely hilarious, yet at its heart is a tragic tale of a doomed ship and its luckless passengers. And while it's certainly not for everyone, I really enjoyed my time messing about in the Under. Another imaginative and memorable VR experience that's definitely well worth grabbing on Oculus Quest is A Fisherman's Tale. This time around you're a wooden puppet who lives in a lighthouse, naturally, and who spends his spare time working on a small wooden replica of his homestead. But one day when you lift the roof off that model, you discover a tiny version of yourself living in there. And not just that, but your own home's actual roof appears to have lifted off as well, and now an enormous version of you appears to be looming overhead. Thus begins an absolute mindfuck of an adventure game where you have to pass items back and forth between your various incarnations to solve environmental puzzles. It's a work of pure genius, and getting through each chapter will seriously take some proper lateral thinking, as well as some thorough exploration and perhaps a healthy dose of illicit substances. Factor in the surprisingly emotional story and that slick presentation, and this is one of my favourite titles right now on the Oculus Quest. One of the most popular recent breakout titles is Beat Saber, a VR title that has you slicing and dicing a bunch of harmless cardboard boxes with 2 glowing swords. Sounds pretty random, but it is a hell of a lot of fun, and the VR aspect makes it an incredibly immersive experience. Now Beat Saber is not just a test of your mobility, it's also a test of your reactions as well, and if you want to conquer those higher difficulty levels and beat the challenge mode, you'll definitely want to get a lot of practice in. The fact that you're rewarded for more energetic thrusts means that you really do burn those calories and sweat up a storm. I'm always suitably moist after a proper 30-minute session. The songs are great, and a few expansion packs have already emerged, although they do seem to favour radio-friendly rocky pop shenanigans from the likes of Imagine Dragons and Panic at the Disco. I'm guessing we won't be seeing any Ice 9 Kills expansions anytime soon. Of course, there are a few other rhythm games that also deliver hard on the workout front, and one of the freshest is Synth Rider, which also just hit the Oculus Quest. The setup here is very similar to Beat Saber, except this time around you're punching balls instead of slicing boxes. It's still very satisfying and of course very sweat-inducing. The base version of the game serves up around 30 tracks in all, with a decent mix of 80s style synth action, pound and dubstep, and even a spot of rock and metal, Hell, which definitely gets you in a punchy kind of mood. It's a good little collection of bop too, and you have a choice of 3 different modes to play through as well, including one which rewards more frantic arm swinging and a special challenge mode that makes things a lot more tricky for seasoned players, for a points bonus of course. Don't worry if you want a less stressful experience though, as there's 5 difficulties to choose from, and you can even turn off the fail feature for missing too many of those glowing orbs. And if you're in the mood for a spot of lovely violence instead, then definitely check out Robo Recall Unplugged. This fast-paced first-person shooter has you retiring a bunch of rogue robots by basically tossing them about and blasting them to bits, all while dodging and deflecting their attacks. The graphics have been noticeably scaled back compared with the Rift version, but you still get loads of enemies coming at you, while the cable-free nature of the Oculus Quest once again makes for a more satisfying gaming experience. Robo Recall Unplugged is a bit on the short side though, so it's best picked up on sale, although that said, the replayability factor is pretty high. Next up on our list is Moss, which sees you buddying up with a cute little animated mouse thing called Quill. She's apparently bored of sneaking into people's flats and nicking their cheese toasties, and so off you trot on a grand magical adventure. Moss is absolutely stuffed full of charm and whist and wonder, and it makes really good use of that VR platform to really draw you into its world, with similar mechanics to the excellent Astrobot on PSVR. Things tick along at a gentle pace, but in between the solving of puzzles and enjoying the lush visuals, you will find yourself occasionally battling baddies, and I never found myself growing bored of the experience. As far as multiplayer co-op VR games go, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes is one of my all-time favourites, and the great news is you can already grab it for Oculus Quest. The concept is brilliantly simple. One player dons the Oculus Quest headset and is presented with a complex bomb which they have to explore and disable before the timer runs out. The other player or players are armed with a virtual bomb disposal manual which they can access on their smartphones. The key to success here is careful communication. The VR player has to describe exactly what they're seeing and doing while the others guide them with clear instructions. One mistake and it is kablooey time. Things get incredibly tense with the more difficult devices, and there's no greater feeling than pulling off that old action movie cliche and defusing a bomb with just 1 second left on the clock. Bosh! Now if that really got the old adrenaline pumping, then definitely check out I Expect You to Die. This tongue-in-cheek adventure slaps you in the sexy tux of a secret agent and thrusts you into various perilous, far-fetched situations. You'll need all of your wits to solve the many puzzles and escape each scenario unharmed, so definitely don't go down in too many martinis beforehand. With its chucklesome humour and clever mind twisters, I Expect You to Die is an absolute delight, and I love how you can interact with pretty much everything you see on screen. An extra level has just been added, with more planned for later in 2019, and if you can buy just one Oculus Quest game, then I definitely say throw your cash at this one. A Quest game with a very similar vibe is Time Stall, which has you preventing disasters on a dysfunctional spaceship while saving the hapless crew members. You'll once again have to make use of whatever random gadgetry you can find within reach to stop crazed robot chefs and exploding generators and all kinds of space-based shenanigans. It's a bit more trial and error based than Expect You to Die, but it is still bloody hilarious. So those right there are my personal picks of the very best Oculus Quest games you can get as you head into 2020, but there are a fair few other titles there on the Oculus Store that are definitely worth a mention. Star Wars fans will obviously get a kick out of the Vader Immortal trilogy, 3 short VR experiences that have you mastering the Force and taking on the masked menace himself in a lightsaber duel, although that is obviously saved for the final episode. You'll want to play them all in order to get the most from the story, and there's some fun set pieces scattered throughout, plus an arcade style dojo mode that also has you battling waves of enemies, definitely a good bit of extra value for your cash. And if you're after another gripping adventure game, definitely check out Red Matter, a sci-fi puzzler that has you breaking into a deserted space base to steal intelligence from an opposing faction. It won't be too challenging for adventure fans, but the haunting atmosphere and the mysterious setup definitely kept me hooked until the end. Another game that gets the old ticker racing is Thumper, which is once again a port from a PC and PSVR title. This may look like some kind of weird action racing game hybrid, but Thumper is actually a rhythm title which has you dodging obstacles in time to the pounding beat. Those psychedelic visuals definitely match the heavy soundtrack perfectly, and it's a proper sensory overload at first until you really get into the groove. And if you're after a proper challenge, Thumper is very punishing but rewarding, and it's well worth grabbing. And last up, of course, I can't not mention Superhot VR, a simple but fun action game that has you running about the place killing everything in sight. It's kind of a sexy mashup of Pistolwhip and Time Stall. Everything moves at the same pace as you, meaning that you can stop at any time and carefully plan out your next move. Should I grab this guy's gun and blast him in the face, or maybe just take him down with a well-aimed pool ball right in the nads? the world is your oyster. And what a wondrously violent oyster it is as well. So that right there is my favourite collection of Oculus Quest games right now. But what about your own personal favourites? Did I miss them out? Definitely let us know in the comments down below. And please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for loads more on the latest and greatest tech. And I'll be continuing to round up my favourite Oculus Quest games month by month as 2020 strolls on. Cheers everyone, love you!